Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're really diving deep into the cognitive science behind emotional contagion, and more importantly, figuring out exactly how to stop absorbing everyone else's stress. Because, let's be real, if you've ever felt completely derailed by a colleague's bad mood or, a suddenly frantic group chat, you are absolutely in the right place.
Think of this as your survival guide for the modern nervous system. We're going to cover 5 main areas: the myth of natural calm, the biology of catching stress, the 3-second delay, the Raincoat protocol, and finally, the leverage of calmness.
All right, jumping right into Section 1, the myth of natural calm. We'll explore exactly why composure is a practice, not just a built-in trait.
So let's just go ahead and shatter this illusion that being chill is just something you're naturally born with. Our source material opens with a story that is frankly painfully relatable. The author gets this polite but heavily passive-aggressive comment on the internet. You definitely know the kind. One of those "well, actually" remarks that basically implies you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. The author felt their chest tighten up, they started typing out a quietly devastating reply, deleted it, typed another one, and then they just closed the laptop. Why? Because they stopped and asked themselves this one incredibly powerful anchor question. Is this actually my problem, or am I just standing near it? I mean, wow. A total stranger had typed some words on a screen, and the author realized they were literally about to let their own nervous system carry that stranger's baggage around for the rest of the entire day.
And this story reveals a really crucial secret. Composure is not some genetic gift. Those people you think of as naturally calm, they're actually just practicing a relentless, invisible series of decisions about what they allow into their nervous system. They've just trained the responses you're seeing. That whole mythology of the naturally calm person is honestly kind of dangerous because it implies you can't acquire the skill yourself, but you absolutely can.
Moving right along to Section 2, the biology of catching stress. Let's look at the actual neuroscience of emotional hijacking. You might be wondering, why is it so incredibly hard to just ignore other people's stress? Well, it comes down to a concept researchers formalized back in the early 1990s called emotional contagion. This is basically automatic mimicry. It proves that we humans catch moods involuntarily, exactly like catching the physical cold. Think about it. If you walk into a room where someone is visibly anxious, your body actually starts mirroring that anxiety before you've even spoken a single word to them. Crazy, right?
And this really gets to the heart of our core biological flaw. Back on the savannah in 30,000 BC, emotional contagion was a literal lifesaver. I mean, if someone in your tribe started screaming and sprinting, you didn't politely ask them for a status report, you just ran. The ones who paused, well, they got eaten. But fast forward to modern day, and almost none of the panic in your life is about a physical lion. It's usually what? A missed deadline in a Slack channel, or maybe a snippy email? Your nervous system, though, it just dumps cortisol anyway, because it literally cannot tell the difference between a prehistoric predator and your boss just having a really bad Tuesday.
For those of us who love the deeper neuroscience, this brings us to polyvagal theory. Basically, when something stressful hits, your threat detection system fires up and your body shifts straight into fight or flight mode. But we also have this social engagement system that can actively step in and say, hey, wait, no, this is safe. The thing to remember is that calm people haven't magically eliminated their internal alarms. Their threat detectors definitely still fire. They've just built a much stronger, faster social engagement override through sheer repetition.
Okay, Section 3, the 3-second delay. This is all about inserting deliberate cognition right into the middle of a crisis.
So this brings us to what might be the single most useful intervention for practicing strategic detachment. It allows you to treat a crisis as just a data point rather than an actual threat. 200 milliseconds. When stressful input arrives, your brain's built-in smoke alarm, the amygdala, wants to force a reaction inside of just 200 milliseconds. That is dangerously fast. It fires way before your prefrontal cortex, which is your logic center, has even logged what just happened. If you react in that tiny window, you aren't really making a decision. You're just being pulled along by the panic.
To stop yourself from getting swept up like that, you have to follow a specific sequence. First, you have to endure that initial 200 millisecond amygdala trigger. Next, you force a brief physical delay of about 3 seconds. And finally, you allow your prefrontal cortex the time it needs to actually come online. Those 3 seconds, that's just enough time to ask yourself, hold on, is this actually my problem?
But how do you actually do that in the heat of the moment, right? Well, you have to physically train this delay muscle. You can build this pause by simply putting your phone in your pocket and walking into another room for a full minute after getting a stressful text.
Or sure, go ahead and type out that heated, highly satisfying email response, but force yourself to save it in your drafts folder for an hour. Or, and this is actually my personal favorite, just force your hands to lay completely flat on your keyboard for 3 seconds before typing anything. The physical pause actually creates the mental pause.
All right, Section 4, the Raincoat Protocol. We're talking about shifting language and self-concept.
This brings us to the core metaphor of our explainer, making the shift from a highly reactive sponge to an unflappable raincoat. Now, notice the grammar shift here. The internal monologue of the sponge collapses the entire crisis right into their identity, using words like I, me, and my. And when you do that, your brain treats it as an identity threat, and it sounds the full physiological alarm. But the raincoat? They step very slightly to the side. They use phrases like there is a situation or things went wrong. By structurally relocating the problem outside of themselves, they engage the brain's problem-solving systems instead of those threat response systems. It's the exact same set of facts, but with an entirely different biological result.
Now, a super crucial point here is making sure we don't confuse detachment with suppression. True strategic detachment is never, ever emotional suppression. Suppression is just jamming your feelings down, basically bottling up the pressure until you inevitably explode like twice a year. Detachment, on the other hand, allows those feelings to exist without letting them dictate your behavior. You process the data, you release the panic, and there's no massive accumulation of pressure. It means you can stay incredibly useful in a crisis without actually becoming part of it. To practice this without turning into some cold, unfeeling robot, you can try out a few daily tools. For example, there's the 2 containers visualization. You literally just imagine placing your colleague's stress into their own mental container, which keeps yours free for your actual responsibilities. Or you can try the borrowed third-person view. This is where you narrate your own stress in the third person, almost like a documentary, saying something like, "She received the email and felt her chest tighten." I know, it sounds totally ridiculous, but it creates instant psychological distance.
You also need to actively monitor yourself to see if you're, drifting back into sponge territory. And you can catch this by listening for your own linguistic tells. Are you using extreme words like always or never or nothing? Are you needlessly escalating a single specific annoying email into a grand narrative of total career doom? Simply recognizing these tells instantly strips them of their power.
Finally, Section 5, the leverage of calmness. How earning this composure leads to disproportionate influence.
So this entire framework has a massive high-status payoff. You see, when tension rises in a room, human nature dictates what we call the volume matching trap. Voices get louder, sentences get sharper, and everyone just unconsciously calibrates to the highest energy, most panicked person in the room. But a calm person, they completely break this chaotic loop simply by refusing to raise their volume. It's almost gravitational. Seriously, after a few minutes of one person staying totally steady, the entire room just starts pulling toward them.
And this right here is exactly why genuine strategic detachment absolutely wins out in the real world. I mean, it's the reason the calmest person at a negotiation table almost always gets the best terms. Everyone else just runs out of emotional ammo first. It's why the calmest parent ends a toddler's tantrum the fastest. And it's why founders or leaders who remain composed under intense public pressure earn such immense trust from the market. We instinctively read calmness as competence. It's a real game changer.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought to chew on for your own life. The very next time chaos inevitably erupts around you, when the room figuratively catches fire, will you instinctively jump in and absorb the panic like a sponge? Or will you stand there for those 3 crucial seconds, ask yourself if it's really your problem, and choose to stay perfectly dry in your raincoat? The storm is definitely going to continue outside, but the choice of whether to get wet is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep practicing that pause.